Hello, everyone. A very good evening. I hope I'm audible and visible. Can you guys see me? Can you guys hear me? We are just about to start with another session on reading comprehension for MAHCET Prep 2025. I hope everyone's keeping well. Last day of the week. I hope we had a great weekend. So, without further ado, we're going to start with some good passages today. I'm assuming that we've started reading already, and that too from an eclectic reader's point of view rather than just reading for yourself. What I mean by eclectic reader is you're reading from different genres. If you haven't started yet, please do, guys, because they would not be giving you passages as per your choice, right? When it comes to any of the competitive exams like MAHCET, all they expect is the passage we have thrown in front of you. You should be able to comprehend it well and solve the questions, right? So, on the similar strategy, MHCTs would also be giving you questions based on certain passages which will be given to you, and they would not be specific to the stream you chose for yourself. Like if I do not like to read about economics, there will be passages from economics and business which I'll have to read anyway and comprehend, right? If I do not like philosophy, they don't care about it. So the best way is that we should get molded as per the passages we generally encounter. Okay, so what we are trying to be is an eclectic reader, as I've always told you. uh, I hope I can write. Okay, guys, so what we're going to do is, in the meantime, let's quickly read the passage, right? And then we'll be solving some questions for this passage. Quickly have a look at it. Let me know once you're done reading, and then I'll take you to the next slide. Please let me know if you're done reading. We can move ahead to the next slide. I'm assuming that we must have. Let's move to the next one. All right. Moving to the next paragraph. Please have a look at this one. Guys, also, I want you guys to please jot down the summary of each paragraph you read, the tonality, what you're reading through, and then we have some questions to look at. Last paragraph, then we discuss these questions, guys. Last two paragraphs we have. Quick 10 seconds, then we move ahead. Take care. Have a look at this one. Then we have questions, guys. So I want you guys to pretty quickly run through the passage with me. Then we'll be figuring out the GST of the passage, that is general idea, structure, and tone of the author. So what does this paragraph talk about? It says, most scientists who study the physiological effects of alcoholic beverages have assumed that wine, like beer or distilled spirits, is a drink whose only active ingredient is alcohol. तो साइंटिस्ट का क्या मानना है कि जो भी ड्रिंक्स होती हैं, right, that most scientists who study the physiological effects of alcoholic beverages, जो भी साइंटिस्ट physiological effects पढ़ते हैं scientific beverages के, alcoholic beverages के, they've assumed that wine, like beer or distilled spirits, is a drink whose only active ingredient is alcohol, जिसमें mainly active ingredient जो है वो alcohol ही रहेगा. And because of this assumption, these scientists have rarely investigated the effects of wine as distinct from other forms of alcoholic beverages. इस assumption की वजह से कि alcoholic beverages have assumed that wine, like beer or distilled spirit, is a drink whose only active ingredient is alcohol. Alcohol is the main active ingredient. इस assumption की वजह से scientists have rarely investigated the effects of wine as distinct from other forms of alcoholic beverages. They've not really studied the effects of wine. However, unlike other alcoholic beverages, wine has for centuries been thought of having healthful effects that these scientists who do not make no distinction among wine, beer, and distilled spirits, but also study only the excessive or abusive intake of these beverages, have obscured. So, from the very first paragraph itself, we get to know the intent of the author. What is the intent of the author? He is trying to mold your mind to the fact that wine or physiological effects of alcoholic beverages is not always bad. They can also be helpful. They can also be healthful, right? Says most scientists have assumed that wine, like this, is this, that active ingredient is alcohol. Because of this assumption, they've investigated all the effects of wine as this. However, other alcoholic beverages who do not make no distinction among wine, beer, and distilled spirits, they've not studied them properly, right? They've just considered the abusive intake of these beverages. They've not actually considered the main impact of it. They've obscured. Now, second paragraph talks about recently a small group of researchers has questioned this assumption and investigated the effects of moderate wine consumption. While alcohol has been shown conclusively to have negative physiological effects, for example, alcohol strongly affects the body's processing of lipids, fats, and other substances, including cholesterol, causing dangerous increases in the levels of these substances in the blood increases, there are a large contributing factor in the development of premature heart disease. And the researchers found that absorption of alcohol into the bloodstream occurs much more slowly when subjects drink wine than when they drink distilled spirits. Right. So since the author is more inclined to share the healthful effects of alcohol rather than just considering the other, alcoholic beverages where we assume that alcohol has to be there as a main ingredient, it says a small group of researchers has questioned this assumption. Now researchers are actually questioning this assumption. Which assumption? The assumption which is highlighted here, that because of this assumption, these distinct other forms of it's just a second. So this is the assumption we are referring to, that because of this assumption, these scientists have rarely investigated the effects of wine as distinct from other alcoholic beverages. And then it says recently a small group of researchers has questioned this assumption, investigated the effects of moderate wine consumption. While alcohol has been shown conclusively to have negative physiological effects, for example, alcohol strongly affects the body's processing of lipids, fats, and other substances, causing dangerous increase in the levels of the substance in the blood, increases that are a large contributing factor in the development of premature heart disease. Researchers found that absorption of alcohol into the bloodstream occurs much more slowly when subjects drink wine than when they drink distilled spirits. Right? So it's about the increases that are happening that are a large contributing factor in the development of premature heart disease. More remarkably, it was discovered that deaths due to the premature heart disease in the populations of several European countries decreased dramatically as the incidence of moderate wine consumption increased. Okay. Another important point they're talking about here is that more remarkably, it was discovered that deaths due to premature heart disease, when they are not considering taking care of their heart well, and premature heart disease can also lead to deaths. So in the populations of several European countries decreased dramatically as the incidence of moderate wine consumption increased. So he is trying to again bring out the healthful effects, right? In the first paragraph, the author talks about the healthful effects of alcohol which have not been considered. Alcohol has always been demeaned, right? And here it says, more remarkably, it was discovered that deaths due to premature heart disease in the population of several European countries have also decreased and drastically as the incidence of moderate wine consumption increase. If the number of deaths due to premature heart disease is decreasing because of the wine consumption, that means it has healthful effects. And one preliminary study linked this effect to red wine. But subsequent research has shown identical results whether the wine was white or red. What could explain such apparently healthful effects? So one thing, the studies show increased activity of a natural clot-breaking compound used by doctors to restore blood flow through blocked vessels in victims of heart disease. In addition, the studies of wine drinkers indicate increased levels of certain compounds that may help to prevent damage from high lipid levels. Right? So one thing they're talking about is studies show increased activity of a natural clot-breaking compound. Why? Why drinking of wine is helping them to become healthier, decrease the deaths by a dramatically strong number. So studies show increased activity of a natural clot-breaking compound. It's because of the clot-breaking compound which is there in the wine, which helps them to break all clots, and they're able to have a restored blood flow through blocked vessels in victims of heart disease. In addition, studies of wine drinkers indicate increased levels of certain compounds that may help to prevent damage from high lipid levels. So that's another addition. And although the link between lipid processing and premature heart disease is one of the most important discoveries in modern medicine, in the past 20 years, researchers have found several additional important contributing factors as well. We now know that endothelial cell reactivity, which affects the thickness of the innermost walls of blood vessels, and platelet adhesiveness, which influences the degree to which platelets cause blood to clot, are each linked to the development of premature heart disease. Right? They're contributors of heart disease. Studies show that wine appears to have ameliorating effects on both of these factors, like really strong effects. One, it decreases the thickness of the innermost wall of the blood vessels. Second, it reduces platelets adhesiveness. Again, another study demonstrates a decrease in the platelet adhesiveness among individuals who drank large amount of grape juice. So what are we doing now? We are trying to emphasize more on the healthful effects by showing some other reasons. Right? One of the reasons is an individual who drank grape juice was able to decrease the platelets adhesiveness. This finding may be the first step in confirming speculation that the potentially healthful effects of moderate wine intake may derive from the concentration of certain natural compounds found in grapes and not present in other alcoholic beverages. So, again, trying to justify the same fact that yes, consumption of alcohol is not always bad. Consumption of wine, which contains alcohol, can be good for the body. It leads to resolve the clots, creates that hormones which dissolve the blood clots and restore the blood flow in the vessels. Right. So all these options, all these reasons the author is trying to give is again trying to justify one big thing, that is consumption of alcohol can be healthful. Consumption of wine can be helpful for the body. Okay, now let's have a look at some questions, guys. I am throwing some questions at you related to the passage itself, and these are not very tough questions. They're very easily doable questions. All you got to do is understand the question, read the options, ask me to take you back to the passage from where the question is. In case you're able to find the answer, good enough. In case not, I'm here to help you out. Also, we need to figure out what type of question is it. Is it a fact-based question where we actually need to go back to the passage and check? Or is it a question type wherein you are straight away asked to figure out the tone of the author, the main point of the author, the passage, the primary purpose of the passage, something on a generic level. Since you've been through the entire movie, you just need to summarize it now. Right? So take 1 minute, quickly go through the question, then we discuss the question, guys. All right, Karthik. Just 30 seconds more and then we discuss. All right, let's have a look at the question. So the question is about figuring out the author's main point in the passage. Most accurately states the author's main point in the passage. So A says, okay, before we jump on the options, as I told you earlier as well, we make sure that we understand the question stem well, first of all. Second thing, before we move to the options, we always try to figure out on our own what can be the answer. Like main point is more like a summary. If I have to figure out the crux of the passage, I know the author is talking about the benefits of alcohol, which have generally been missed on. The assumption that alcohol is bad for the body is the only assumption we are actually surviving on or thriving on, right? But he wants us to go at the hindsight and not be obscure in our viewpoint about alcohol, and also with the justifications he's given that it helps you to resolve the blood clots. It has helped in showing a drastic decrease in the number of health issues, heart issues, which were occurring earlier, and the people who started taking wine, their number of deaths decreased, right? So all of that contributes to one main point, that consumption of alcohol is not always bad, can also have some healthful effects. So since we've already figured out the main point on our own, now we'll try to go hunting for the options and see which one can be kept in the bucket, which one can be eliminated, since we know a borderline, which skeleton to look around for. So A says, because of their assumption that alcohol is the only active ingredient in wine, beer, and distilled spirits, scientists have previously studied these beverages in ways that obscure their healthful effects. Okay. So because of their assumption that alcohol is the only active ingredient in wine, right? The scientists have always assumed that alcohol is the only active ingredient. They've previously studied these beverages in an obscure manner, not considering the healthful effects. Yes, we can consider that. Let's move on to the next option. A new study of moderate wine consumption calls into question the belief that premature heart disease is caused solely by the presence of high lipid. No, it's definitely not there. C. C says researchers have found that alcohol from moderate wine consumption is absorbed into the bloodstream. Again, these are touching upon only subsections of the paragraph, not the entire passage. And of course, they're not true as well. Although it has long been held that moderate wine consumption has healthful effects, scientific studies have yet to prove such effects definitively. They have proved it already. They want us to accept it now. Wine, unlike other alcoholic beverages, appears to have a number of significant healthful effects that may be tied to certain natural compounds found in grapes. Now, you might feel that A and E have a tie up. There's a tussle between A and E. Karthik, you went for E earlier. That wine, unlike other alcoholic beverages, appears to have a number of significant healthful effects. It's not we're trying to draw parallelism, but what we're trying to say is that the assumption that alcohol is the only active ingredient in wine, scientists have previously studied these beverages in ways that obscure their healthful effects. Don't you think A is a better choice over E, Karthik, and the rest of us who are here with me? So A is the answer for this question and not E. Okay, let me take you to the next paragraph. Next question. The first paragraph, the author most likely refers to the centuries-old belief that wine has healthful effects in order to what? It's a direct question. It's a fact-based question. You need to go back to the first paragraph and answer. Okay? So please understand the question stem. Look at the options if you want to. Let me know. I'll take you back to the to the first paragraph once you are done reading the options. Okay, Karthik. Please refer the paragraph, I would suggest, so that we have a clarity. If you want to move me to the next one, I'll take you to the next slide. Quickly go through it. Are we done? Karthik and others who are with me? Oh, yes, yes, yes. What's your name, by the way? It's Chamchi. That's what I can read at. Is this how you pronounce your name? Okay. So let's move back to the question, guys. Let's have a look at the question and see what answer holds. It says in the first paragraph, the author most likely refers to the centuries old belief that wine has healthful effects in order to what? Why is the author referring to this particular, point of wine having healthful effects in the first paragraph? It does say that most scientists who study the psychological effects of alcoholic beverages have assumed that wine, like beer or distilled spirits, is a drink whose only active ingredient is alcohol. And because of this assumption, these scientists have rarely investigated the effects of wine as distinct from other forms of alcoholic beverages. However, unlike other alcoholic beverages, wine has for centuries been thought to be having healthful effects. And then eventually says that it's been wrongly misinterpreted. We have been obscure in our understanding about the beverages. So, to demonstrate that discoveries in the realm of science often bear out popular beliefs, how many of you think B option can be considered? Yes, guys. How many of you think that option B can be considered? Karthik, did you think that B was a good option? Provide evidence for the theory that moderate wine consumption ameliorates factors that contribute to premature heart disease, or demonstrate that discoveries in the realm of science often bear out particular beliefs, argue that traditional beliefs are no less important than scientific evidence when investigating health matters, suggest that a prevailing scientific assumption might be mistaken, or refute the argument that science should take cues from popular beliefs. We should be correct. But do you think D is a better choice? Prevailing scientific assumption might be mistaken. That is what it's trying to prove. That till now, whatever we're considering about wine, that it has bad effects, it is not. It's rather healthy. So it should be D Delhi. Okay. So far, we have been making those wrong assumptions. And no other option feels better than, you know, D Delhi. So let's stick to D for this. Please have a look at this next question. This is a little important and a little tricky because it does have except. Now here we've been kind enough to keep except in bolds for you. In your exam, they would not be this modest keeping it bold specifically. They would keep it very small and hidden amongst the words so that you don't really check out this word except hidden in the question stem. Please have a look at the question, then we discuss this. Yes. Confused between A and D. Okay. So it says, according to the passage, each of the following might help to prevent premature heart disease except, right? So if I take you back to the paragraph here, if you look at, most remarkably, it was discovered that deaths due to premature heart disease in the populations of several European countries decreased dramatically as the incidence of moderate wine consumption increased, right? So here itself we get to see the answer which is hidden. Now, if you look at the options, don't you think you'll be able to figure out the correct answer choice, Karthik? Are you able to figure out the better one? Like out of A and D, which one should we go for? A says increase in the degree to which platelets cause blood to clot. D says increase activity of a natural compound that reduces blood clotting. So here too, we did talk about two things. Right? Alcohol strongly affects the body's processing of lipids and contributing factor in the development of premature heart diseases. Then we said that one preliminary study linked the effect of red wine. It could have healthful effects. Studies show increased activity of a natural clot breaking compound used by doctors to restore blood flow through blocked vessels in victims of heart disease. In addition, studies of wine drinkers indicate increased levels of certain compounds that may help to prevent damage from high lipid level, high lipid levels. And then you have link between lipid processing and premature heart disease is one of the most important discoveries in modern medicine in the past 20 years. Right. So there it says we know that endothelial cell reactivity, which affects the thickness of the innermost walls of the blood vessels, and platelet adhesiveness are each linked to the development of premature heart disease. Studies show that wine appears to have ameliorating effects, that is, decreasing the thickness of the innermost walls and reducing platelets adhesiveness. Right? So, A says increase in the degree to which platelets cause blood to clot. Why would they want to increase? है ना? And D says increased activity of natural compound that reduces blood clotting. And if you're looking for something which does not do. So, don't you think D is a better choice here? I'm sorry, A is a better choice because D, yes, D is rather in line with what the paragraph says. Increase activity of natural compound that reduces blood clotting. We want to reduce the blood clotting, and we're looking for something that doesn't do. Might help to prevent premature heart disease. Except so, except is only with A. Increase in the degree to which platelets cause blood to clot. So option A is the correct answer choice. Okay, please check the next one. Okay, do you want me to take you back to the paragraph? You have to strengthen the passage's position concerning the apparently helpful effects of moderate wine consumption. Let me take you back. Let me know if you want to just move around to another paragraph for a while. Okay. So, if true, would strengthen the passage's position concerning the apparently healthful effects of moderate wine consumption. Okay. So, A says subjects who consumed large amount of grape juice exhibited decreased thickness of the innermost walls of the blood vessels. B says subjects who were habitual drinkers of wine and subjects who were habitual drinkers of beer exhibited similar lipid levels in the bloodstream. If they exhibited similar lipid levels, that makes no sense, right? We need to show that either increase or decrease, some impact should have been there. C says who drank grape juice exhibited greater platelet adhesiveness. What do we do on platelets adhesiveness to increase or decrease? One study demonstrated a decrease in platelet adhesiveness among individuals who drank large amounts of grape juice. This finding may be the first step in confirming speculation that potential healthful effects wine intake may derive from the concentration of certain natural compounds found in grapes and not present in other alcoholic beverages. So you want to reduce platelets adhesiveness. That is what we understand is right. So if you're trying to reduce platelets adhesiveness, which is also visible, yeah. We now know that endothelial cell reactivity, which affects the thickness of the innermost walls of the blood vessels and platelets adhesiveness, are each linked to development of premature heart disease. Studies show that wine appears to have ameliorate effects on both these factors, decreases thickness of the innermost walls of the blood vessels and reduces platelets adhesiveness. That means you want to reduce platelets adhesiveness. That reduction of platelets adhesiveness is good for us. And that's what is being done in the people who drank grape juice. So if you come back to option number C, Karthik now, subjects who drank grape juice exhibited greater platelets adhesiveness. They want to reduce platelets adhesiveness na, than the subjects who drank no grape juice. So adhesiveness should reduce rather than increasing. Okay. D says subjects who drank excessive amounts of wine suffered from premature heart disease. No. Who possess a natural clot breaking compound were discovered to have a certain gene that is absent from subjects who do not possess the compound. No. Subjects who consumed large amounts of grape juice exhibited decreased thickness of the innermost walls of the blood vessels. Yes. That is what they want. The thickness of the blood vessels should decrease. The answer is A. That's correct. It cannot be C. I hope that's clear. Please have a look at the next question now. Yes, Karthik. Can we discuss it? Option D. So it says it can be inferred from the passage that the author would most likely agree with which of the following statements. Okay. It's a simple true false question. A says scientists should not attempt to study the possible healthful effects of moderate consumption of beer and distilled spirits. No, they should. Like, there's no point stating that unko study nahi karna chahiye. Of course, they should, and they should understand the healthful effects of it. The conclusion that alcoholic lipids affects lipid processing should be questioned in light of studies. It does, and the author doesn't want to question that. Moderate consumption of wine made from plums or apples rather than grapes would be unlikely to reduce the risk of premature heart disease. Red wine consumption has a greater effect on reducing death rates from premature heart disease than does white wine consumption. And beer and distilled spirits contain active ingredients other than alcohol, whose effects tend to be beneficial. Right? So we've gone through all the options, but if we eliminate the options, we can see that red wine consumption has a greater effect on reducing death rates. That's what it does say, than does the white wine consumption. So, of course, we can hold on to this option. Since we are running short of time, guys, I would want that we quickly cover this one more question and then we move to a fresh passage. Karthik, please have a look at the question. It's a simple attitude question, not a very tough one. 30 seconds one. Okay. It says based on the passage, the author's attitude towards scientists discussed in the first paragraph can most accurately be described as what? Is he highly enthusiastic, tacitly approving, grudgingly accepting, overtly critical, or clearly outraged? It's not outraged. Highly enthusiastic, he is not approving the fact, he's rather a little skeptical. Right? Overtly critical bhi nahi hai, but is he grudgingly accepting or is it tacitly approving? He is partially okay, but he does want us to be less obscure and more open to the fact that consumption of wine can be healthful. Okay, so it could be either tacitly approving or it can be only be tacitly approving rather. Right? He's not very strongly critical, but yeah, tacitly approving is the right option. Okay, let's move to another passage now. Uh, let's quickly go through this one. Karthik. All right, guys, I think we can try a fresh passage. Let's try with this one. Yeah, we can try this passage. I think we've done the earlier one earlier, right? So let's quickly go through this one. Okay, let me take you to the next slide. Just two paragraphs to it. So let me know if you're done reading. We have question after this. Can we discuss the passage, Karthik? And everybody who's here with me? It's about the prey dynamics, predator-prey dynamics, how it happens, especially when it happened during the archaeological era. Okay, let's have a look at it. It says recent study has provided clues to predator-prey dynamics in the late Pleistocene era. Researchers compared the number of tooth fractures in present-day carnivores with tooth fractures in carnivores that lived 36,000 to 10,000 years ago. Okay. Okay, so it says recent study has provided clues to predator-prey dynamics in the late Pleistocene era. Researchers compared the number of tooth fractures in present-day carnivores with tooth fractures in carnivores that lived 36,000 to 10,000 years ago, and that were preserved in Rancho La Brea tar pits in Los Angeles. So it's talking about some fractured tooths. They were, you know, they were captured and they were kept safely. They were preserved, I would rather say, so that they could be investigated later on, right? And we got to know all of this from the studies that happened, predator-prey dynamics, which have been studied lately. And right, so we are trying to study the predator-prey dynamics, which happened, which used to be a part during the Pleistocene era, how the predators used to prey on the animals they were trying to prey on. So how were the dynamics? How were the things were placed? Researchers compared the number of tooth fractures. So they're trying to compare कि कितने tooth fracture हुए थे 36,000 years पहले or 10,000 years पहले. So that's the time comparison they have here. Breakage frequencies in the exact species. Just a second, guys. Pen tab is not working properly today. Breakage frequencies in the extinct species were strikingly higher than those in the present day species. In considering possible explanation for this finding, researchers dismissed demographic bias. So one thing they had to discount was demographic bias, because older individuals were not overrepresented in the fossil samples. They rejected preservational bias because the total absence of breakage in two extinct species demonstrated that the fractures were not the result of abrasion within the pits. They ruled out local bias because breakage data obtained from other Pleistocene sites was similar to the lab data. And the explanation they consider most plausible, most effective is behavioral differences between extinct and present day carnivores in particular. So, more contact between the tooth of predators and the bones of prey due to the more thorough consumption of carcass by the extinct species. Carcass is a dead remain of an animal. Such thorough carcass consumption implies to the researchers that either that the prey availability was low, at least seasonally, or that there was an intense competition over kills, over the hunts, and a high rate of carcass theft due to relatively high predator densities. So I hope we understood the passage. What are we trying to understand? We're trying to understand the predator-prey dynamics during the Pleistocene era, and that too on the basis of the recent study which has been done. And those tooth fractures, they were preserved earlier. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to compare how the tooth fractures happened 36,000 years ago, and the same thing happened for 10,000 years ago. The animals, we've captured the data from the tooth, the bone that were preserved. And then what it talks about is that the breakage frequency of the extincted species was strikingly higher than those in the present day. उस time पे breakage होने के chances ज़्यादा थे. Now, considering everything, we have to fix certain parameters to come to a point. The parameter we fixed here is the demographic bias. That is सब जानवरों में same kind of population हम consider करें दोनों era के लिए, right? So, demographic bias is dismissed because older individuals were not overrepresented in the fossil samples, right? Whenever you come to any conclusion with the numbers, you need to go with the samples collected. And here we've discounted any demographic bias because the older individuals, the elderlies, they were not overrepresented in the fossil samples. They rejected preservational bias. Preservational bias isn't like how were the bones preserved, to what extent were they captured well, or what species, what samples have been collected, which species have been considered. So all of these preservational bias have been currently rejected, and they ruled out local bias because breakage data obtained from the other Pleistocene sites is similar to the Labria data. So we're not considering कि इस वाले zone में ज़्यादा breakage होगा, उस वाले zone में ज़्यादा होगा. Local bias because breakage data was also same. We've eliminated that as well. So eventually what they come down to is they consider most plausible is behavioral difference between extinct and present day carnivores की कैसे difference कैसे होगा, extinct जो हो गए उसमें और जो present carnivores है उसमें कैसे difference होगा. और इनको मेजरली जो स्टडी करने को मिला था वो था कैरकस कंजम्पशन. कैरकस मतलब डेड रिमेन्स ऑफ एनिमल, कोई जानवर मर गया उसके बाद उसको खाने आए, ठीक है. सो कैरकस कंजम्पशन पे अगर नंबर बढ़ गया, मतलब देयर वर मोर प्रेडेटर्स हु कमिंग फॉर कैरकस कंजम्पशन, हंट इज मोर टुवर्ड्स अ कैरकस कंजम्पशन, इसका मतलब या तो डेड रिमेन उनको खाना पड़ रहा है क्योंकि उनको फ्रेश किल पॉसिबल ही नहीं है, कोई जानवर नहीं मिल रहा उस टाइम पे, तो सीजनेबली देयर इज नॉट इनफ प्रे लेफ्ट और अवेलेबल, और otherwise it could be high rate of carcass theft due to relatively high predator density. ऐसा भी सकता है कि predators ज्यादा है और जानवर उतने available नहीं है. That's why they are going through this. You can look at the primary purpose question here. Present several explanations for a well-known fact. Suggest alternative methods of resolving a debate. Argue in favor of a controversial theory. Question the methodology used in a study or discuss implications of a research finding. Are we presenting several explanations for a well-known fact? There's no well-known fact per se. There's no debate again. In favor of a controversial theory, if you're not in favor or against, methodology used in the study, you're not questioning it. Implication of a research finding is okay. We'll go with E. Right, Kartik, that's the correct answer. So that's how we'll be solving more of RC questions. Let's keep the session till here. Let's catch up again on the coming Wednesday, most probably. Okay. And we'll try picking up some parajumble questions as well. All right. Thank you so much, guys. I hope you have a great week ahead and a very happy Monday. It should be a cheerful Monday, not a blue Monday, right? So see you very soon on coming Wednesday, guys. Thank you so much for attending the session.